I've been working on finishing some projects like this autumn theme piece that I started several months ago. And now it balances the spring theme piece that I made way back in the spring. I also finally got around to making some cordage here that's going to be a closure for this little slow stitched pouch that I made quite some time ago. Let me show you what's inside here. And I've been slowly adding to this all year, following along with something called Take a Stitch Tuesday. So Take a Stitch Tuesday is something that runs for a full year, and each week during the year you get an email that suggests some stitches to you, and this is what week 46 looks like this year. They'll be starting over again at the beginning of January, and I'll leave a link in the description box for this video if you want to go and take a look and sign up for it. And you can use those stitches in whatever way you like. This is my second year following along, and here's what I did in 2023. As you can see, this looks quite different. If you signed up, you won't get instructions on how to make either of these pieces. It would be up to you to decide how you want to use the stitches. Now back to my piece here. I'm going to find a spot where I can add this week's stitches. I never really did figure out how to do that stitch properly, but this is what my contribution looks like for this week, and I don't think it makes my piece look any the worse for that. So back to my twining. As I'm sitting here doing this twining, I'm thinking about what I might do next year. And Sierra here has been a huge help, I have to say. And after many, many hours of twisting those strands together, I'm finally ready to sew the closure onto my bag. And I'm just taking one end and just sewing it down, not really too worried about what the stitches look like or if they're perfect or anything like that, because it doesn't really matter. I'm doing this to please myself, and if it does not make me happy to do things neatly and precisely, I'm not going to worry about that. And as I'm sewing this down, I'm thinking about what I might do next year. While I like the experience of trying all those new stitches, I have to admit that I'm most fond of doing things with very simple embroidery stitches. Some of those stitches were very difficult for me, especially as a left-handed person, to figure out. And there, it really is so satisfying to feel like something's finished, and I think this is just the perfect home for my two Take a Stitch Tuesday projects. So I really want to do something that just uses really simple stitches that gets more into other kinds of ways to use cloth, like the twining that I was doing there. So here's what I'm thinking for next year, in case you think you might like to follow along or even just watch along. I've got this piece of cloth. It's torn from an embroidered tablecloth, not my embroidery, and I don't particularly like the embroidery. It's slightly bigger than a ruler, so it's a 30 centimeter or a 12-inch ruler. And if you want to follow along, maybe you have something like that you'd like to work on, or perhaps you'd like to work on a piece of clothing. That particular piece of clothing started its embroidery journey at an event called Crafts and Cocktails that I came across when I was in Guatemala a few years ago. What's not to like about that? And I had planned to add more to it every time I went on a trip, but that hasn't happened yet. So what else might you need? You would need a sewing needle of some sort, and somebody commented that I need a short sewing needle so I can use up the ends of threads. Well, here's a pretty short needle. The problem with this one is the hole that the thread goes through is also really small, and I have a hard time using it. You'll also need some sort of thread. What kind of thread? Again, whatever you have or whatever you can find easily. I use whatever is in front of me. You'll probably also need a pair of scissors. They don't have to be fancy. I think these came from the dollar store, and maybe some other bits of scrap cloth. And if you don't have little bits of scrap cloth, maybe you can cut up some old clothes. We may also use a marker or some paint or some paint pens, and we'll see where things go. So what are we going to make? I don't know. I don't know yet. That's the part about it being intuitive. I'll figure that out as I go along. One thing I do know is it's not going to look like this. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I cannot give you instructions for how to make this. It's a completely original, one of a kind. One other thing that I can tell you is that it's going to start out very humbly. It's not going to look fantastic right from the beginning. Just like this piece started out really simply and it didn't really look all that impressive, but here's what it looks like now. Quite a difference, wouldn't you say? And I made several make-along videos for my subscribers on my Ko-fi page. Ko-fi is a service that's similar to Patreon, where for a small fee you can support a creator, and all the videos are still up there if you feel like you would like to check them out or to support my channel. I'd love to have you over there. I'm still working out the 2025 benefits, but for now you can certainly go back and check out my things on table videos, including the new Christmas tree one that I've just recently uploaded. There's one other thing I want to share with you before I go. I've been doing long-term weekly projects for about 10 years now, and this is what I worked on this year. It's a series of intuitive mixed media collages, and I wrote down things that I thought about as while I was working on them. I'd like you to feel like my channel is a place where you can feel safe and comfortable, but at the same time, you may find that there are times when you feel super uncomfortable, and that's okay too. And I hope even when you feel uncomfortable, you'll stick around. And here is the very last thing that I wrote. It's not about making grand statements. It's about doing the things somewhat regularly and continuing on in a small way that fits into a small place to eventually make something big. And I look forward to seeing you in 2025. Bye for now.